Real Conversations, and you're welcome to it. If it's your first time here, subscribe to this channel, turn on your notifications, and welcome to the Blah 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 podcast. Hello, hello, chat family. Welcome to today's podcast. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day, all of those things. Today I wanted to talk about a conversation about respect. I I see these days that respect is just not there. You know, respect is just not there for adults, authority figures, and I wanted to have a conversation to also ask my chat family what you all think too. Do you feel like respect is gone these days, or do you think there's still hope of respect? Today's podcast is We Never Dared to Do Back in the Day. It's just certain things that was just a no-no. I feel like I lived in the dark ages because I remember times where people just didn't do certain things to other people. People dressed a certain way. Of course, there's always a few that did not dress appropriately, but for the most part, you know, men dressed, in a very classy way, had themselves very put together, clean, neat, nice haircut, shave, clean shaven. Ladies wore nice clothing. It's just people were classy. Things were just different back in the day. But, there's things that we never dared to do, not only as a child, but also there's things that just adults didn't do either. And the first one that I have is back in the day, you just never would talk back to any adult. It didn't matter who it was. If you were a child, you just would never. There was just that level of having respect for adults, even the adults that you didn't care for, you didn't like that much. You still had levels of respect because you knew they were older than you, and it's just things you just didn't do. It was a no, no, no. And if you dared to do it, it wasn't like now. Back in the day, there were adults, and if you were off track, they would correct you. And it wasn't in a harsh manner, but they would, stop running in here. Don't do that. But you know better than that, or whatever it is. Or aren't you supposed to be in school? It's like your neighbors were your family. It was a community. Those were the times where I feel that communities raised children. It wasn't just the parents. But these days, it seems to be that, parents don't want anybody talking to their children. Um, I find it to be very sad. So kids can run amok, rule the house, rule their parents, do anything that they want, and tear up their things and yours, and nothing should be said to them because they're children. It's a very different set of circumstances and life right now. And back in the day, we never dared to be disrespectful. We never dared to be disrespectful to our parents, to any adults, to just, no, you just didn't do it. You know, you said hello and goodbye. I remember that men would open a door for a lady or even kids. Um, if you got on a bus and there were not many seats on the bus, if you got on as a lady or a child, a man would get up for a child or a lady. Everything is different now. every person for themselves. I guess when it came to people say there's equal rights now, so we don't have to. You're on your own. You do what you want. But I don't think that it's right. Hi, Glenda. How are you doing? Good evening to you, and good morning for us. How are you doing today? There were just things that you just didn't do when you were younger. You were never disrespectful to your parents. You respected your teachers or other authority figures. People were just respectful of one another. And I just honestly don't get it. And I do think that it does go back to the parents. Who's parenting the children? Children are just not being parented. And that's the sad thing. Children are not being parented. They're allowed to do whatever it is that they want to do at home, running in the house, tearing up the place, being rude and disrespectful. There's a lack of discipline. And I think that that's the difference between them then and now is discipline existed back in the day. And yes, of course, there was times where the discipline went out of control and it was not discipline, it turned into abuse. But there were, rules. And rules are not necessarily a bad thing. It's when it becomes overbearing or demanding. I think everything in balance is important, not just for adults. And there's rules for adults too. There's just things that you just didn't do back in the day when you were an adult. You showed up to work on time and you kept a job. Back in the day, people used to be on their job from the time they started it until they retired. And then when you retired, you got a pension or a retirement plan. Now these days, you retire and you have nothing. It's just different times now. Things have changed not only in society, but in the government and with money. Of course, back in the day, things were less expensive. I do remember back in the day that, my parents used to give me a few dollars and I could have 2 or 3 bags full of whatever treats I wanted. I could get a bag of chips. I could get a 2 liter soda. Who's old enough to remember the Winn-Dixie check sodas? I could get a whole 2 liter soda. I could get a bag of chips. Um, and it wasn't like Doritos or anything, but I do remember that the bags used to be full to the top. Now the bags are half empty and they're 4 to 5 times the cost that it used to be. Everything has changed. Just sometimes I like to reminisce on things back in the day and remember about, when you thought it was hard times. The hard times were not then. The hard times are now. Those were the good times. And back in the day, I never dared to ask any questions. I never ever dared to ask why. You never asked, where are we going? Why are you doing that? Who will be there? What time are we leaving? You never dared to ask a question from an adult. They would just say, hey, do this or hey, do that. And you just were obedient and you did it. And if you didn't, we all knew the consequences. It wasn't like now. You were going to get a open-handed slap in your face or a swat on your butt or something thrown at you. That's just how things were back in the day. You knew your place. Kids knew their place. And I'm not saying now that kids don't know their place. Thank you for dropping emojis, Glenda. I appreciate it. And I think you have a premiere this morning, don't you? If you have a premiere, drop the link in there. Oh, I don't think you have a wrench. Hold on 1 second. Let me make you a moderator. Okay, I just made you a moderator. You could put in your link to your video. Um, Things were just different back in the day. That I just miss those times. I miss the times where you knew if you showed up somewhere that there was going to be respect. You knew that nobody was going to do whatever it is that they wanted to do, but you also knew that there were boundaries. You know, these days that there are no boundaries for children, that children can do whatever it is that they want to do. And you have to almost be scared of your own children. You almost have to be scared because you think if you do or say anything, the police will come and arrest you. It's crazy. You actually feel like you can't parent, you can't do what you want to anymore. And then later on, when the children are out of control, who do we blame? Also, another thing that we just didn't do back in the day was we didn't show up late. You never showed up late. You were on time or you were early, um, no matter what it was, to school, to events, to people's homes. Now people show up, you give them a time frame, and they show up whenever they want to even very important events like a wedding, a baby shower, school, your job. People show up anytime they want to, like it's optional. Show up whenever you want to. And if you ever say anything to them, they get very upset or angry. It's so weird to me how things have changed. And I know that life happens and things like that, but it seems that people have a lax attitude when it comes to work now and responsibilities. Even like people who are parents, if you have children, people expect other people to take care of their responsibilities, like your children. Um, there's nobody else's responsibilities but yours. It's your children. And it's like they are expecting other people to take care of their kids. And I'm talking about the people who are lazy. They're lazy, they don't want to work, they don't want to do anything, and they feel that it's other people's responsibility to take care of their kids. Now, I know that, things are very hard right now. Just trying to keep a roof over your head and food on the table. Things are so high, and, adults have issues too with their health, people getting older, and your body is just not the same like it used to be. But it's very difficult. Oh, I'm really low. Hayward, let me switch. I'll come right back. I hope that that's better. Thank you so much, Word. I hope that that's better. How are you doing? Things are just different. Things are just different than they were back in the day. Things are just different. I remember that there was a time where you just you knew to be on time or you were early. Now people just show up whenever they want to, with an attitude, And you can't talk to them and tell them what to do, and then they get mad when they get fired. Well, I'm glad you're good. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your support. And I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand how people just don't do the right thing. And I think because the volume was low, I'm going to go back over my point. Back in the day, you just never asked questions. Well, I can't say we couldn't, but I never could ask questions as a child. I'll speak for myself. I could never ask my mom where we were going and what we're doing. When you were a kid, you just showed up to things and that was it. You didn't get to ask. You didn't get to ask why whatever was whatever. You didn't get to ask. You didn't dare ask because there was going to be a slap across the face or a swat on your butt. You didn't ask questions, especially as children, because that was viewed as disrespectful. Everything you did as a child was viewed as disrespectful, and it's not. I do think that there were certain things back in the day that was not good. There was not a lot of communication between parents and kids. It was just like you did whatever they told you to do, and you didn't really understand. Um, they didn't talk about boundaries, but we all knew the boundaries. We knew the things that you definitely could not do. You're welcome, Glenda. Feel free to drop a link to your premiere or your video. Same thing with you, Word. Oh, you asked? Oh, I never asked. I never asked, Word. I saw my brothers and my sisters ask, and I saw what happened to them. They flew into the wall. Or, no, that's not true. When I was about 6 years old, and I kept begging my mom, I wanted something in the store, and I don't remember the rest. I all I remember is that I flew into a rack of clothes, and my mom just kept on pushing the cart. So I guess the answer was no. That's just how it was. That's just how things were back in the day. You just had to, whatever they told you to do, you just did it, and that was the end of it. But people these days, they're so disrespectful. And one thing that you didn't do back in the day was be disrespectful. You didn't talk back. You didn't ask questions. You didn't do so many things to any adult. It didn't matter. It wasn't just your parents or your older family members, it was any adult. You respected all adults, whether it was your teacher, it was a doctor, it was a lawyer, it was any authority figure. Anybody who was older than you automatically gave them respect. And these days, the youth, they will see you and they will cuss you out. They will want to call you by your first name. And I have to tell them, you have to set it up. No, you can't call me Marlene because me and you are not the same age. My name is Miss Marlene to you. And honestly, I do go back to blaming the parents or whoever is raising the kids. That I get it. I know some people will say, "Oh, don't call me Miss because Miss is my mother. I don't want to be called Miss because that's for old people, not me." That I demand that respect. I put in these years of my over 20 plus years, and I have experience and things to teach the youth. So yes, I do deserve to be called Miss Marlene. I You have to tell them these days when they call you. I was like, that's a correction. It's Miss Marlene to you, and that's all it's gonna be. Good morning, Tamika. How are you doing? Happy Wednesday. Hey, Forever Mimi. How are you doing? Welcome in. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your support. Yes, thank you. You guys could drop as much emojis as you want. And if anybody has a video or a premiere, you can drop it into the chat. Yeah, but there's just things that we just automatically did not do when we were younger. Well, at least I didn't. I did used to test the boundaries and to see what I could get away with. And I knew that I shouldn't have done certain things, right? I knew I shouldn't have done, you know? I knew I should have done the right thing. I knew I should have listened to my mama, and I didn't. Hey, Ravi, how are you doing? I knew that there were certain things that I should have, you know, have done. I knew that. Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Word. Oh, you're from Brazil, Ravi? Well, welcome in. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a great day, Word. That's one of the things about life is that people just don't understand how the things that other people are going through. And when I was younger, I never knew the things that adults were going through because they didn't communicate. That's one thing that I wish that I would change. I could change from back in the day. I loved the freeness that I had as a child. I was free. You know, we weren't allowed to go inside when we got home from school. You went in, you did your homework, you got a snack, and you were kicked out. You couldn't come back until the street lights came on, and that was it. You had to go and explore and have fun and go hang out with other kids and laugh and play. And just sometimes it's not, things are not that way. And they can't be that way because life is more dangerous. You know, parents have to work probably two jobs instead of one, or it's a single parent home. So it's a lot of things that are different than back in the day, and things are way more expensive. Back in the day, you didn't talk back to any adult. You didn't. You just didn't do it. It was a no-no. It was to me. It didn't matter if it was a teacher, it didn't matter if it was your parents. They my neighbor many a time disciplined me like, "Oh, you're going to walk past me and not say hello?" Well, I didn't see them. You just didn't do it. There was the courtesy of talking to everybody, and things just have changed. You could be living right next door to somebody, and they'll just look at you right in your face and keep on walking. And things have changed, and not necessarily for the good. I think that it's a horrible thing that you don't know who your neighbors are. You don't you don't know, and they're not interested in knowing you either. And I get it. Sometimes some neighbors are weird, but for the most part, I think that community needs to come back. So thank you, Glenda. Word told me. Hey, writers, how are you doing? Welcome. Appreciate you being here. When I get on my computer later, I'm gonna make Rachel and Forever and Mimi. I'm gonna make you a moderator. I don't know why I can't do it while I'm live, but I can't. Hey, friends with super channels, how are you doing? Welcome. I have to make you a mod too. You guys are always free to drop your links, and anybody who is a moderator, you're free to drop a link. I'm going to make you guys mods when I get on my computer in a little bit when the stream is over. So the next time you come in, you'll be able to drop a link to your channel or a video or a live stream premiere, whatever it is that you want. Always feel free to connect in here. We all need each other's support. But back in the day, you never talked back to any adult. You didn't. You just didn't do it. And I tried it once or twice. I think one time I tried it with my mother, and I got slapped right into a whole bunch of clothes in the store. My mom just kept going. And one time I tried my dad. That was a big mistake, a very big mistake. I said something, my dad said something, and I mumble something, and I just remember being lifted off the ground, and my dad pulled me up to his level and looked me in the eye and said, "Never ever talk back to your father." And I was trembling like a leaf. I never did anything like that ever again. That was my one and only time in my life my dad ever disciplined me. One and only. I didn't have to learn that lesson again from my dad. Because my dad, when you're little, my dad seemed to be huge. And I think my dad was only 5'10". But, if you're only 2 feet tall, yeah, that's tall to you, and being strong. But let's get into it. You guys let me know in the comments. What are some things back in the day that somebody used to do that you would never do right now? And one thing was talking back to any adult. Like in school, I never would think to talk back to my teacher. And things were different back in the day. Your teachers, they dressed with class. I remember my male teachers used to wear like a long sleeve dress shirt, a tie, a vest. Sometimes they would wear the pocket watch, and all of the teachers were married, and if they weren't married, they were just single. It was no in between. They weren't just like, doing whatever they wanted to. Back in the day, teachers had to be married or they had to be single, and that was it. Like, they're not trying to get married or they are married. There was no in between. And I remember my teachers used to have the best. They were like the best dressed. They would dress like they were probably going to church. They would have on. I remember my teacher used to have on beautiful dresses. She would have pearls on. She would have her hair done. It would be curled up really pretty. Or, they just dress nice. Their ladies, and their nails were done. And I don't mean with fake nails. I mean, their nails were always painted. They just dressed with class, and just they were classy people. It's just a different life now. To see teachers now, they're wearing t-shirts and jeans to school. You can't really tell the difference between a teacher and one of the students. They all look the same. Things are different. Very, very different. Yes. I know, Tamika. I tried my dad one day, and that was one and only day ever in my life. And my dad got with me. He grabbed me with one hand and lifted me up to his level so I could look in his eyes and say, "Never talk back to your father." And then he put me back down. And I remember just standing there shaking like a leaf. He didn't put his hands on me, he didn't touch me, but he schooled me. He disciplined me that day. And I never, ever tried my dad again. Ever, ever. Because me and my dad had that sort of a relationship. When my dad said something to me, I got it. I didn't have to say it twice. But I don't know, there was something about my mother. I used to love to get my mother all wound up. I enjoyed it. It was comical to me. I used to, I used to like to irritate my mother. I feel bad now that I'm an adult, the things that I used to do to my mother, but it is what it is. I really did. I drove her crazy. And we just didn't dare do those things. We didn't dare disrespect our parents, other adults. We didn't dare talk back to our teachers. We didn't dare talk back to other adults. We dressed with class. We definitely never, ever, 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 ever asked questions. You never did. Even when you had questions, like I remember asking my brothers or my sisters, "Where are we going? What are we doing?" But I never would dare to think to say it to my mother or my father or whatever adult was there or driving. You just didn't do it, and you didn't show up late. And one thing I learned the hard way, I don't know who else did, but back in the day, I didn't dare dip my mouth into a grown folks conversation. You, ooh, you might as well just write your obituary because you were going to be gone. Dipping your mouth in a grown folks conversation, you just you they would say you have lost your ever loving mind. Maybe that's a South um, response. You have lost your ever loving mind. You better not ever dare. Because I used to hear my mom or my dad or other people having a conversation, and I knew that it didn't go that way. I knew it. I was like, no, they're lying. I would say it to myself, but I wouldn't dare out of my mouth say, that's not how it went. That's not how it it was. And they weren't there. We knew that it was different, but you didn't dare put your thoughts in it unless they asked you, which was very rare, but sometimes they would ask you, how did it go, or what was that person's name? That was your opportunity to speak up. But if they didn't ask you, you better have shut your mouth. You better have. Good morning, Miss Tracy. How are you doing? Welcome, welcome. Our parents did not have a problem with disciplining us in the public. Oh, they didn't? Oh, my parents never had to. All my mom would do is look at us. And I mean, it was the fear of God. I would be shaking like a leaf because I knew if she turned back and looked at me, that means I was going to get jacked up when I got home. hmm That means I was going to really get whooped up on. I knew it. You get slapped in the mouth and they say, this is a grown folks conversation. They sure would. They sure would. They would say it's a grown folks conversation. I think maybe once or twice. You know, when you're a kid, you got to test the lines, test the boundaries. And I remember one time I said, like, they weren't there. Like, I was in the other room, and everybody in the room stopped and looked at me, and I ran away. I don't think once, I think everybody tests things once or twice to see, can I get away with this, or can I do this? And you all know that I was a very inquisitive child. I had to know how things worked. And once or twice, I said something to my mama, and then I ran down the street. And she was like, "You got to come back." But I had folks all over that I could stay the night with, so I didn't come back. But I thought the next day my mama would forget. She sure didn't forget. I came in that morning and I got whooped up on. That's just how it was. And back in the day, you didn't dare talk about how we felt. Our feelings did not matter. It didn't matter if we were tired, if we were hungry, we were frustrated, we didn't feel good. Nope. They didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear it. That when they told you to get up and do something, you better rush and do it. And you better not have no lip. Oh, and here was the thing. I don't know if it's a South thing, but my mom used to always say, fix your face. Oh, that used to drive me crazy. Like, if she would say something to you, you had to have a pleasant look on your face all the time. You could never have a frown because then that would be you are showing yourself. You're showing up yourself. You think you're well, like, what? Did you roll your eyes? Or do you have like, you look sad to do this work? You better not. You better do what I tell you to do with a smile on your face or else. And that's just how it was. Yes, welcome to everyone who's here. Thank you, Glenda. And that's just things were just different back in the day. I just wish that we could bring some of the things back. Like I sure wish we could bring back some of those back in the day prices of things, how much things would cost. I do remember my mom going to the grocery store and getting two shopping carts full of food and the groceries being like $65. And I mean full of meat and drinks and snacks and everything that you could want. And the bill used to be $65. And that was around, I would say like 1989. Mm-hmm. 1989. It was two grocery carts full of groceries, and I still remember when the lady said it was 60 something dollars. I still remember that. Forever Mimi says, if I was told I was going to get a whooping and I didn't get it that day, I would definitely get that whooping after mom and daddy was fed up with me. Oh my goodness. Not me. I used to think my mom would forget, and my mom never forgot. Especially if we were out and we embarrassed her. If my mom would lean down and look at us, we already knew we were toast. We already knew. And I would already start crying. And my brothers would be like, oh no. And everybody would be comforting me because they knew I was done with. They was like, oh man, mom's gonna get with you. And sometimes, like you would be playing around just being a child. You weren't allowed to. You weren't allowed to. You weren't allowed to be a child. It's like back in the day, you had to be like a little adult. You had to be a little adult. You had to be responsible. Um, of course, now I would never say anything like that. But back in the day, you had things that you had to do. I remember having chores in the house, things that I had to do in the house, things that I had to do outside the house. I was responsible for my homework. I was responsible to go and get groceries for a few older people who lived in the neighborhood so that I could get my quote unquote pocket change. And it wasn't nothing. I had to walk probably 10 blocks to the store, walk, not get dropped off, not with a bicycle. I had to walk about 10 blocks to the store, get them their stuff, and this was in a paper bag. That shows you the times. And I used to have these two big paper bags walking, and you had to do it fast. And then go to their house, and I think I got probably $1 for doing that, and that was my pocket money. Back in, I didn't get money from my parents. I had to work hard, and I'm grateful that my mom and my dad raised me to be that way, because from I was a child, I've been hustling. I've been working hard. I know that nobody is going to give me a handout. I was raised that way. But one thing that I didn't like, that I was raised that when you're struggling, that it's okay to ask for help. I never, growing up in my generation, you never asked for help, even when you were struggling. And that's something that I would definitely change. I would shift that. It's not good. Like, it took me going to therapy to come to that realization that it's okay to ask for help. Yes, you work hard, but sometimes we get in those hard times where maybe you get laid off your job, you get sick, maybe somebody that you love passed away, your situation changed, or whatever the reason why you can't take care of yourself at the moment. And there's nothing wrong, especially if you've been putting into the system. Sometimes we all need assistance. Go and get that government assistance. If you need the food stamps, if you need, disability, if you, whatever it is, if you need it, go and get it. But I used to feel ashamed. I would feel ashamed when I needed some help, when I would be like on the in between jobs, like when I finished college and I didn't have a good, secure job yet. I felt embarrassed because my parents raised me that way. You never ask for help. You never, don't shame your family. Like, that's embarrassing. Handle your own business. And that's not good. Good morning. Yo, it's Mike. How are you doing? Welcome. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you being here. Everybody hit the like, please. That's one thing that I will say that is different than now. Now there's rights, there's rights for children, and there's responsibilities. There's things that you just don't do, and if you do it, we all know the consequences. Back in the day, it wasn't, the police weren't called because you disciplined, quote unquote, or as I call whooping. The police weren't called if you got a whooping, if you did something wrong. they would say, you need to go home and whoop your kid, or you need to put your kid in line. Things are different. Things are different now. And it's my opinion, not anybody else's, but I do not that I'm in agreement with that you should hit a child until they bruise, but I personally don't see anything wrong with swatting your kid on the tush one time, or slapping them on their hands, telling them no. I see nothing wrong with that. But that's me. I'm not telling anybody what to do or to think. But in my house, that's how it goes. There's things you just don't do. But but back in the day, I do understand when it used to go too far, that it wasn't just one swat. It was they would hit you until their hand got tired, until you were really severely bruised up. My parents and my great aunt, they did not believe in charity. Oh, I know. I'm glad you're doing good, Mike. Welcome in. Everybody, welcome Mike to the show. Yeah, my parents didn't either. They raised us that way, that you never asked for help. My mom was like, then you go get another job, you do this, you go and do some day labor, but you definitely never ask for help. And that's one thing that I don't agree with from my childhood. As an adult now, I can say that, but when I was a child, I never got it. And we grew up, it was 10 of us. And my mother and my father never got charity. And yes, I can agree, sometimes we definitely were in need. Not want. We were in need. We needed some support, but they just didn't do it. I don't know if it was the ego thing. I don't know if it was my parents' Caribbean background. I don't know, or a combination of all those things, plus living in the South. And times are a little bit different, even though there wasn't any. We never had racial things, but we still knew that that was a little bit of apparent. You know, there were things that you just didn't do and ask for. My mom and dad used to say that because they came from that time. Um, I think when my parents came to this country in New York, it was in the 60s, and it was right in the cusp of segregation. So my parents still had a little bit of reservation of asking for things and going into certain places. Things were just different. These kids do not have any kind of consequences for their actions, and that's it. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem with society in general now. There's entitled kids and there's entitled adults, and we've seen them, the Karens and the Kens, thinking that they can control what other people do and think and say. And also there's kids who have got everything. They've gotten everything that they could want or ever need, and still they want more. So I do think 100%, of course, balance is necessary for everything. There's nothing wrong with having conversations, but it's also important to tell kids to be humble, to be respectful of other people's time and energy. That's the things that I talk about. I talk about those things with my, I talk about those things with, I have a special needs sister who now I say that she's my daughter. And I also have a nephew who is my son. And we're raising. So things are different when you are, things are different than they were back in the day. Like I feel good now with how I was raised because I do have old school values, but at the same time, I have balance. I allow them to ask questions. I talk to them about things. We communicate, but also at the same time, there's rules, there's discipline, and there's respect. I think that that's important. It's very important to have discipline, to have rules, and to have respect for one another. And back in the day, I don't know about you guys, but back in the day, what I didn't like is that there was not affection shown or talked about, saying the words, the actual words, I love you, you matter to me, you're special, I'm proud of you. Those things just didn't exist back in the day. Well, I can say back in the day in our family, we just didn't do it. And I have seen some of the older people in my family, they're coming on board with that. It's wonderful to see the older generation maturing and learning that it's okay to give and get hugs. It's okay to talk about how you feel. It's okay to tell a child why certain things happen. And it's not because um, they don't respect you, but so that they understand why. I had to bring the older generation to understand, like my aunt and my uncle, they're asking, why do you tell them those things? And I explained, and I said it's important to tell kids why they need to get up, because you need to learn structure, you need to learn discipline, you need to learn that you need to learn now, so that when you get to be an adult, you understand that I'm not just getting up just because somebody said get up. Yeah, I'm getting up because I respect my parents, because I respect rules and boundaries. It's important. It's important. It's so important, and I'm grateful to be in the space that I'm taking the old school and mixing it with the new school, and making my own little stew of rules now, because I know about healthy boundaries. And that's one thing that I didn't have growing up. There were no boundaries, there were no rules. Well, no, I said, I take that back. I recant that. There was nothing but rules. There was nothing but rules. There was rules, but you didn't understand why they existed and all of those things. Everything was just no, and that was it. Not not in my family. Wow, Miss Tracy. But you gotta have rules. You gotta have rules. You have to have boundaries. And I only have three rules in my family. We respect one another, we communicate, and we love each other. Those are the three rules of the house. So if somebody feels disrespected, we talk about it. Why did you disrespect this person? Okay. And we try our best to respect one another, to love each other, and to communicate. And I feel like that's the difference between then and now, is we've learned. I know I can say I've learned how to be mature in a healthy way. My background was only a kiss and a hug when you're greeting somebody, or if you haven't saw him in a long time. But I do agree with you. Yes, I say that to because my sister's older, but she's special needs, so mentally she's 9 years old, and I showed her for the first time that it's okay. It's okay to hug one another. It's okay to give each other a kiss. It's okay to have affection. It's okay to talk about how you're feeling if someone upsets you, but we do it with respect, because those are the three rules of the house: respect, love, and communication. And just showing that, when you have those things in the home, respect, love, and discipline, you know how to act when you step outside the house, because we want to say that we have all of those things at home. I don't have to search for love. I don't have to search for discipline. I don't have to search for communication. I know that it's safe in my home. And I think that it's important for children to get that from their parents, learning how to communicate the right way, not just always being muted. You know, let them say, tell them how you feel in a respectful way. You know, respect, it goes both ways. And back in the day, it was definitely not that way. Parents, parents definitely did not respect children. You were a child, and basically, for me, I feel like children were basically slaves to cook and to clean and to whatever the parents wanted you to do. You felt loved, definitely. I know no, I definitely didn't feel loved growing up. And that's not any shade to my family, but I just didn't. I didn't feel loved um at all. And that makes me sad to think that way, but it's the truth. So I wanted to have a difference and a separation in my own home because I've matured. I've learned certain things and I know what is good things and I know what things are bad. That I have no problem with letting them express themselves with respect, you know, with respect, I ask for respect and the same thing for them. I respect them as well. Exactly. For Mimi, all they said was just do as I say, and that's not good enough. Now I'm grateful to be in a space that I'm teaching the next generation, you know, hey, it's time to get up because, and I say because we're going here and here. And I said, and when we get there, so and so will be here. So um, don't run in the house because we respect other people's space, we respect other people's property, and blah, blah, blah. And whatever it is, I prepare them. And, and I also am open that if they feel uncomfortable in some way, that they can tell me. Back in the day, you can never say uncle, and everybody has that weird family member that makes them feel uncomfortable or does things that makes them feel sad or weird. Yeah, that they can come and tell me. They make me feel sad or weird or uncomfortable. I don't want to be around them. And I'm grateful to have that because when I grew up, there was a lot of very gray areas or you didn't feel comfortable. People make you feel strange or demanding or they abused you and you could never say anything. It was mum's the word. You had to zip your mouth. A lot of abuse went on because there was no communication back in the day. There was none. And that's not a good thing. So it's like it took all these years. I feel like it took me being way past an adult to finally be in the space to say it's not good to not have communication. I had to change that inside of me so that I don't want to make another generation scarred. I want them to grow up knowing that they can ask questions for me because if they're not going to ask me, they're going to ask other people who don't have the experience. I want them to learn from me, and I also tell them the things that I did when I was growing up that wasn't good, tell them I I did this. I used to hang out. I used to go places secretly, and I was like, you don't have to do that. If you want to go somewhere, you want to do something, let's talk about it. You don't have to hide. You don't have to hide anything. We can talk about anything. And I do think that it's important for parents, adults, grandparents, just older ones to allow children to feel comfortable to talk about anything without it being like, oh, you can't talk. Like, don't try to control the situation. Let them feel free to express themselves with respect. I think that's the difference. I do. I think that's the difference between then and now. But back in the day, I never felt comfortable to ask questions. I never felt comfortable to say anything I was feeling, especially anything that was dealing with anything of a sexual nature. Liking the opposite sex, being in a sexual relationship, or other people stepping outside the boundaries of touching you inappropriately, all of those things. We didn't talk about those things. And I think now I'm grateful to be in the position. And on another podcast, we're going to have this conversation. I think I'm going to do that late night where we're going to talk about um, sexual inappropriateness. Um, I think I'm going to do that at some point this weekend. We're going to talk about that. Um, Things that are inappropriate and conversations that we should have. So look forward to seeing that. I I am not sure when, but either Saturday or Sunday, we're going to do that conversation and talking about things that are inappropriate for children and for adults. So, look forward to that. Make sure you turn on your notification bell. Probably it will be like maybe 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock on Saturday or Sunday, one of those times, something like that. So I just want to say thank you all so much for tuning in today's podcast. Thank you for your support. And of course, I have these conversations because I do think that it's important to have real talk and real conversations. That's what we do over here on the Marlene Saunders Show. Yes, back in the day, we never dared to do certain things. We never dared to open up. We never dared to talk about things. And that's not a good thing because a lot of abuse, SM, SA, you know, even DV was happening with parents or your other siblings and their relationships, and everybody swept it under the rug and never talked about it, and that's not good. And yes, some things back in the day was better, but we have to learn to blend and melt what was working with now what what isn't, and then strike a balance. So have those conversations, communicate with your children, communicate with your loved ones, tell others how you feel, what you're dealing with and going through. Remember, respect goes both ways. We can't expect children and other adults to respect us if we don't respect them back. Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for coming, Friends with Super Channels, Glenda Perez, Forever Mimi, Ravi, Yo, it's Mike, anybody else that I missed, Miss Tamika, and Miss Tracy. And anybody who watches in the replay, I really do appreciate every single one of you. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section below if you're watching in the replay, and leave me a comment. Good night, Glenda. Good night to all of my friends, international friends in the Philippines. And good day to all of my USA friends. Everybody have a great day. Forever Mimi says, I was so scared to ask. I wouldn't even ask questions when I was in school. Yes, the same thing for me. I would never ask my teacher things. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I didn't pass one of my grades. I was retained because I had so much fear of talking to the teachers that even if I was struggling, I wouldn't tell my teachers and I wouldn't tell my parents what I was dealing with. It's one of those things that it was very unhealthy, the amount of fear that I used to have back in the day, fear for any adult, any person in a responsible position. I would never ask anything. And I'm so sorry that you went through that, Forever Mimi, and anybody else too. We may have got scarred from our childhood or scarred from the past, but now that we're adults, now we have to work on ourselves so that we can be healthier mentally, emotionally, spiritually, so that we can stand up and be good examples for the youth of today. Thank you for tuning into the Marlene Saunders Show, where we have real talk, real conversations, and you're welcome to it. If it's your first time here, subscribe to this channel. Turn on your notification bell so you will not miss when I go live. I will see you all tomorrow, Thursday, same channel, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for another amazing topic and discussion. I really appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for supporting this channel, and I will see you all back tomorrow. Everybody have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your night. You've tuned into the Marlene Saunders Show, where we have real talk, real conversations, and you're welcome to it. I will see you all tomorrow.